Hello, this is Deb, and I am so glad you're here. The first thing we're doing today is folding the fabric that we will be ironing the applique onto. We're going to fold it into quarters to find the center of the sheet of fabric. See that X in the middle? Now I'm smoothing the fabric out on the board, and we are going to pin it onto this ironable surface. When we get this placed on here, we don't want to have to move it around before we iron it. So I am using this board. You could use some kind of a board with a heavy towel wrapped around it, or you could just pin it onto your ironing board if you wanted to. But this is handy for me. So I just turned it so that the longer side was going the width of the applique. Lost my word for a minute there. Okay, now I'm going to take all the sheets out of the package, and I'm going to lay them out in alphabetical order with the letters all upright. So just like you would read them in a book. And the reason for this is all of the pieces will be upright if the letters are upright. So now I am going to clip out piece A, because piece A is the first piece that we will be dealing with. The pieces are held in their frames by just these tiny little tabs. They're just a couple of threads width for each tab, and this helps to keep them organized in the package. It helps with writing the instructions so that I can tell you to take frame A and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Just helps both of us. Sometimes you clip the fabric, but the paper's still stuck. That's what just happened there. Okay, now we're looking at the instructions. They tell us exactly where this piece will go in relationship to the center point. So this is the frame that we're dealing with now, not the piece that we're going to be starting the bunny with, but the frame for that piece. So I've got that little point just exactly where it needs to go. Now we need to make sure the letter is upright, which it is. So then we can remove the paper from the back of the piece. And I always start in a smoother area of the design so that we don't ruin any of those real tiny little points. Sometimes you can pull on those if you start there. It seems like that's the place to start, but it's not. Okay, so now I'm just laying this piece in around that frame piece. And now I can get rid of the frame. But by putting the frame there, it gave us just the right location for the center. Sometimes the piece you're ironing it onto isn't have a lot of room around it, and you need to make sure you're in the center. So you just got a glimpse of the instructions. They show us exactly which piece to do next, which is the B sheet. And it shows us which piece to cut out of this sheet. This sheet has 3 different pieces in it. Snip, snip. Actually, the snipping can be the most tedious part of this. Setting it aside because there's 2 more pieces in it. Again, working on a smooth area to pull the paper off. And those little teeth type things at the bottom are just going to fit right in there. Now fabric is flexible, So you have to be a little gentle with it, but it's also awesome because you can manipulate it like we're doing here. As long as we keep that center point where it started, we're good. But you can work it and rework it. The sticky backing on the pieces really helps keep them right there in place. Just keep working with it. Lift up one, then lift up the other until you get them all fit in there. The idea is not to have any gaps. And the first couple of pieces are usually the most important, at least in these kits that don't have a lot of pieces to them. This is a great one to start with if you're brand new. The bluebird, the cardinal, and the bunny are all very easy to put together. Okay, now we're going to go for the second piece. Sometimes if you can't find a tab to start with, if you turn it over on the back, you can see them, or you can hold it up to the light and you can see them. Once you get one clipped, you can kind of pull the frame away and just move on to the next one. It's pretty easy. And you can refer back to the frame if you're not sure which way is up. Some of these pieces are kind of symmetrical, and it can be difficult to figure which way goes up. And if you stick them back in the frame, you can tell exactly where they're going to go. Now I'm using a dull seam ripper, one of my older ones, using just the little point of it to nudge these into place. You can use a corsage pin, a stiletto, a purple thing. I've even used a sewing machine needle because they've got that thicker end on them that you can grab hold of. Whatever you have that works. You can use a toothpick. You don't have to buy expensive tools. Okay, I think that's pretty much sheet B right there. Isn't he cute? He's coming together. Okay, now we're moving on to C. In the video, it looks like it's the same color as the other brown, but it's not. It's a darker brown. It's the lighting. See, this is one that you kind of had to compare it to make sure you had it going the right direction. It wouldn't fit if you had it going the wrong way. And I'm sorry it's off the camera. Fairly new to this video thing. We will get it fixed in a little bit. Sometimes they can be a little stubborn. If you have a piece that doesn't want to fit, make sure you've got it upright. Go back to that frame and make sure you've got it upright. Okay, we're on to D now. Okay, now this piece may already be out of yours. Might save you a couple of clips here. It's going to be an empty hole that the eyepieces will go into, and I've taken those tabs out of the newer designs because it's just more work and it's not necessary. And that hole right there is what I'm talking about. And a lot of times they just fall out into the bottom of the laser when I take them out of the laser. So if you're missing that, don't panic. We're getting into detail pieces now. They just add so much to the design. They can be a little fiddly sometimes, though. There, we got you this time. Now if I just get my hands out of the way. I don't know if you can hear the wind blowing the windows, but really windy here today. He's shaping up. I just love these batiks. They just really give it a realistic appearance. At quilt shows, people think that they're paint. I've had people come up to my booth and say, "What kind of paint do you use for those?" No, it's just the beauty of the batiks. And the thread count is so high on them that they're just so nice to work with because it's such a tight weave. Okay, now be careful with this piece. It is a very fine piece, that eye piece. It's just very thin, so be careful you don't break it or pull it out of shape. It adds a lot when you get the pupil in there, though, or iris, whatever that part is on the rabbit. Two sheets left, and that's only 3 pieces. This is the little tiny nose that I'm cutting here. And on the instructions, you'll just have to look at the placement for this. There aren't really lines to show you, but there is a little indentation where it kind of is a heart shape. So it's got like a little dip, not in the top, but the little dip goes to the right. But I've seen people put them in a different way and it still looked cute, so it's not a problem. I'm using a pin to pick this one apart because it's such a fine little piece and I couldn't get the paper off of it. See how much those little details add? One last piece and we'll be done. And this is one that you have to check with the frame to make sure you've got it right. It's a little bit more rounded on one end than the other. Look at him. Now, I don't know if you saw it. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to close up all the little gaps. Just make sure there's none of that backing fabric showing through. Now on that eye, I don't know if you noticed it, but the tab that I cut out left like a little thread hanging out. And I did go back and lift up the pink ring and tuck that little thread underneath it so that it wasn't sticking out. So now all we have left to do is press it down with steam. I sped this up so you didn't have to sit and watch 15 seconds at each of those spots. I didn't think we needed 3 minutes of video just for that. But I'm picking the iron up and then setting it down in a new spot. Don't drag it across because you'll move things. Just pick it up and then sit it down. And make sure you cover the whole thing. Isn't he cute? Thank you for watching.